Hey YouTube, Kevin Cleary with a knife video. I've got a great blade for you today. It's one that hasn't, I haven't seen a lot of press. I haven't seen a lot of people excited about this blade, and I'm a little surprised because I was really excited from the first time that I saw it. This is the Cold Steel Ultimate Hunter, okay? Very good blade. There are not a lot of videos out there. The Apostle has one, and you know I've seen that because you see the finger choil here. But I saw this blade and thought two things in my head. One, I liked the size and the blade to handle ratio. It kind of put me in mind of the PM2, and you guys know the Paramilitary 2 is very well executed in terms of the comfort in hand and the ability to do a lot of work with it. And so when I saw a knife that had a similar, that put me in mind, 3.5 inches and nearly 5 inches of handle, I was like, hey, that's gonna be really, really comfortable and very capable for any kind of real work that you want to get done. So that was one of the things that made me interested. Two is, of course, the upgraded steel from Cold Steel. Three is the fact that this is a very Andrew Demko inspired design. Okay, if you've looked at Andrew Demko's custom stuff, if you looked at the Max 4, this knife really, really has the fingerprints of Andrew Demko all over it. And so that's really cool because for me, I will never own an Andrew Demko custom, to the tune of $2,000. It's just not something I'm terribly interested in. However, to get something that's heavily influenced by him is really, really cool because I think he's a great designer. Previously, I would say the closest would be the American Lawman, and I would say this is very comparable to the American Lawman, but actually exceeds it in the handle. So I love the American Lawman, one of my favorite blades, but it's just, the handle is just a little short for me. So the fact that I can have all of that capability, all of that strength, about the same size and weight, but with a handle that allows me to really get a hold, that for me just clinched this knife as something I really wanted. Okay, so let's talk about the size and weight. I telling you my whole thought process, which is not necessarily. I know, bear with me, guys. Let's go ahead and talk about the size and weight on this. This knife is 8.5 inches, which is great. To me, 8.5 inches is the perfect size for an everyday carry knife. 3.5 inch blade, 5 inch handle. Blade to handle ratio is, of course, a little less than it could be, but that's okay. Very comfortable, very capable. 4.7 ounces, which is just great. Now, one limitation is that the cutting edge here is only 3.25 inches, and they do not, you guys can see that I've removed a little bit of material here, but I did not shorten the cutting edge at all. This is exactly the cutting edge that came from the factory. Okay, now one thing I would say about size and weight, it carries well, but I want you to notice when it's closed, I kind of would have liked to see them allow this blade to sink into the handle a bit further. Okay, so can you see what I mean by that? See how much blade is exposed right in this area? It would have been nice if, it was maybe this much blade exposed instead. Not the end of the world. I just think it makes it look a little odd when it's closed. Okay, otherwise, very, very good blade. And by the way, when you close it and put it in your pocket, you can't see it anyway. So it doesn't really matter if there's more blade than I prefer showing there. Now, let's get into that blade since we've covered size and weight now. This blade is a very traditional drop point blade. It is called the Ultimate Hunter, so it certainly puts you in mind of any typical hunting knife. It certainly has that shape. However, I've said this before, this is a very utilitarian blade shape, and I really like utilitarian blades. You guys know I want a blade that can do just about everything very well. It is a high flat grind, the edge geometry is very good, and so it doesn't matter if you're making fire sticks, if you're cutting up fruit and vegetables for your salad, or if you're, defending your life in a combat situation, this blade is going to do well for you. Is it perfect for all of those things? No. I would say, it's not very pointy compared to the Para 2. It's not a super high grind as you see on the 0562, but it's sort of somewhere in between all of those. And because of that, it's sort of a jack of all trades, which I really, really like. Now, I will say that I have done a bit of everything with this blade, And in my experience, I have not been, there's nothing that I tried to do where I was like, man, this thing really sucks at this. Okay, it pretty well did everything reasonably well. Okay, and that's what I look for in a folding knife, and probably that's what you look for too. Now, in addition to doing everything reasonably well, you do have this CTS XHP, which is a real upgrade as far as I'm concerned for cold steel. I think it's a great move they made going to this steel. Certainly this has performed better for me than AUS 8. However, I do want to say this. It claims on Cold Steel's website, it says 6061 Rockwell. I don't know. I've sharpened this. I've used it a ton because it's the new steel, right? I really want to put it through its paces. I would say it's a little softer than that. Now that's just, I'm not a metallurgist. I'm just a guy who uses knives. And I would say other knives that I have that I know are 6061 Rockwell probably hold an edge a little better than this, but are also much harder to sharpen. And so although I say it's probably, I would peg it around 59, maybe 60, and I know those are small degrees of difference, but this sharpened up super easily for me. It took a burr pretty quickly, more quickly than I expected. It does hold an edge very well. I would compare it to S30V in this sense. I have found, and others have commented on this, that S30V will take a razor sharp edge, but it sort of feels like the first time you cut anything, it loses that razor sharp edge and sort of drops back to just a working edge. And I have found that with this knife as well. You can get a hair popping edge on it very quickly and very easily, but the first time you go and cut something, now it's just a hair shaving edge, not a hair popping edge. Do you understand what I mean by that? So I think it's great steel. By the way, you should keep one other thing in mind about this, especially if you're thinking of, I'm going to use this as a super hard use knife and I'm going to chop down trees and do all kinds of crazy things with it. If this is, as as Carpenter claims, a stainless version of D2, D2 is going to be a little more brittle than AUS 8. Very tough steel, but you could break it. And I've heard a couple of reports of somebody breaking this blade and thought to myself, if it was AUS 8, would it have broken? I don't know. Bear with me, guys. I do have a bit of a cold, and you can hear I'm starting to lose my voice just a little. I think I'll be okay for the rest of the video. Okay, so we talked about the blade. Very, very good blade as far as I'm concerned. Let's move on to lockup and deployment and point out that what I would say about this is it's a triad lock. What are you going to say? It's incredibly, stupidly, ridiculously strong, far stronger than you could probably ever need in a folding knife. Cold Steel is doing all these videos. I'd recommend, if you're not on their channel, go and check out their most recent videos. They have been comparing their triad lock to all kinds of different other locks. Now, certainly they're probably attracting some criticism in doing that. They've recently done a zero tolerance 0350. They've done the Spyderco Tatanka. And a couple other fairly well-known blades, and specifically shown that the triad lock beats those other locks pretty soundly. Okay, now I don't want to get into a big fight with all of you viewers about what's the best lock out there, but I will say this: if you are concerned at all about strength, then you're not going to beat a Cold Steel lock for strength. Now, is it as fun to flip as an Axis lock or a compression lock or something else? No. However, I'm going to say this. Both of my Cold Steels for this year, 2015, have been smoother and cleaner feeling than my previous Cold Steels, with the exception of the Espada. I think the Espada, because it's a more expensive knife in their collection, I think it was finished to tighter tolerances already, but both my Code 4 and this knife are smoother and cleaner than my other Cold Steel knives. Okay, I don't know how else to describe it. I can flick this open, even though I can't seem to do it here on camera. There we go. It does take a little bit of wrist action, but I can't do this with any of my other Cold Steels. Maybe my Recon 1, but I can get a good fast deployment on this. I can't do that with most of my Cold Steel knives. You can get a little bit of lock stick And that's just true of the Triad lock because it pinches in there so tight. Yeah, you get a hard pinch, a really hard deployment, and all of a sudden you go to squeeze this and you go, oh man. I will show you this because it's pretty impressive. That blade will drop quite easily. Okay, let me show you one more time. That is not typical for me in cold steel knives. Maybe some of you have a different experience, but for me, most of my cold steels, I've got to give it a little bit of a flick to get it to close like that. Not so much this blade. The handle, again, is where we're kind of moving on from, oh wait, while we're talking about lockup and deployment, no, forget it. Moving on, let's talk about the handle and about the ergonomics. I'm going to zoom in a little for this part because I do want to show you, this is a 3D milled handle, which is really cool. I definitely like that, and I guess that's as close as we're going to get. The camera doesn't want to cooperate. So there you go, a little bit of a close-up. You can see that I have taken the material out of here to create that choil. Okay, I owned this knife for about 2 weeks and did various things with it before cutting this out. And I'm going to suggest that to you as well. If you buy a knife and you're thinking of modding it, make sure that you spend some time with it first, okay? Because there is a risk, like, you cut out steel here. There's no growing it back. There's no gluing it back in there. That material's gone. So if all of a sudden I didn't like this, I'm kind of stuck, right? So that's why I say, if you get a knife and you say, hey, I may want to do some modification to it. Maybe it's the JB Weld mod on other cold steels that Nothing Fancy recommends. Maybe it's, refinishing the blade or putting texturing on the handle or whatever. What I would say is go ahead and do it. Have fun. That's part of the whole knife collecting experience is learning about knives and learning what you can do to them and what you like and what you don't like. But before you make any major change that can't be undone, maybe use that knife for a couple of weeks to get a good sense for it and then make your decision. Okay, so I used this for a couple of weeks and still went ahead and added this choil. I did, in that time, I tried to purposely put my finger up here and see how I felt and see if I liked using the knife this way, so that just knowing it would be even better once I removed a little bit of material from there. So that's the first thing I want to point out. I did take some material there away where my finger is to create this choil. The handle was already, it was almost like the knife was designed for that and then they just didn't do it. So I just did it myself, okay? This handle is a real win. Compared to other cold steels, normally you get those flat slabs of highly textured G10. This is 3D machined, 3D milled G10. It is very comfortable. It sort of creates like a wood grain pattern because of the layers of G10. It's extremely comfortable in hand. Very, very good. I would compare this to any knife that I've said is extremely ergonomic. Whether it be, the paramilitary, the Mannix, the American Lawman even. This knife, the Griptilian would be another good comparison. All those feel great in hand. And this feels just as good and maybe even a little better because of this sort of hook at the back. It just locks you in. So if you're a person who does really hard work, maybe you're going to use this for skinning animals, for cutting fish heads off, for anything where you're going to be sweating and working hard. Hey, great blade for that because the handle just has no hot spots. It's ideal in pretty well every configuration. Just an extremely well executed handle, and I think this is a bit of a departure for cold steel. As I said, normally you're getting those big flat slabs of G10. So this, I love that they've done it, and they've done a fantastic job with this handle. Very, very well done. The lanyard hole, which we normally talk about, is good. One really cool thing is everyone who talks about cold steel says, oh, the pocket clip. You can't get it in and out of pocket. It tears your pants apart. This does not at all because it's smooth G10. It's not that crazy texturing. However, without that crazy texturing, guess what? You don't lose anything in terms of retention because this knife achieves retention through the shape and the a more subdued texturing, but still extremely good texturing. That means, though, that it goes in and out of pocket just with ease. All right. Now, what would I say about this knife overall? I think it really gets a lot of stuff right. 4.7 ounces, 8.5 inches, 3.5 inch blade. You know, very comfortable in hand, extremely versatile blade shape, tons of different grip options. Just this knife is a real win. Of course, I would have liked to see this choil coming from the factory, and maybe we'll get lucky and they'll make that change for future models. And I would also like to see this closed differently. I think it's a little odd looking in the closed spot. See how it just feels like there's too much blade showing. Not the end of the world, but just an observation. So there you go. I think this is a great knife. If you want a knife that's just going to serve you really well, to be in your pocket day in and day out, be super tough, super reliable, you can't go wrong with lots of cold steels, but especially with the Ultimate Hunter. So there you go. Go ahead and mention in the comments below. I would love to hear about other people's experience with the CTS XHP. See if I'm just crazy. I feel like it's a little softer than what they're claiming. If you've had experience with it, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. Anyway, there you go. That's my take on the Cold Steel Ultimate Hunter. I think this is a really great offering, and I think it kind of represents a departure for Cold Steel, and I think a good departure. All right, talk to you soon.